If you want to hear the 3 by far scariest things to have ever existed in the wizarding world, then stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Creepy Things, a series where I take a look at some of the scariest moments in non-horror franchises and analyze what makes them so frightening. The Harry Potter franchise has always been known for having some of the most disturbing creatures, so let's start by exploring a few of those. This will contain spoilers for the Harry Potter series. Not everything I discuss is inherently harmful, but that doesn't mean fans won't find it creepy. When it comes to Thestrals, I find it perfectly understandable that people would be put off by them. Thestrals are bony, skeletal horses with huge bat wings and reptile-like faces with expressionless eyes. In addition to their sinister appearance, they only appear to those that have witnessed and comprehended death. In this sense, they exist as a metaphor for grievance. Someone who has witnessed death may try to explain their appearance to another, but it would be impossible to appreciate how creepy they are without witnessing death and seeing them for yourself. This is also the reason that Harry Potter and Luna Lovegood are able to bond over the fact that they can both see Thestrals, because both have suffered and they can understand each other's pain. The Thestrals at Hogwarts are well trained and responsible for transporting the Thestral-drawn carriages around campus. However, Thestrals in the wild can be much more dangerous. They are described to have sharp fangs and seize and slash their prey. They're extremely intelligent, and as we see when Luna goes out to feed the Thestrals, they are carnivorous and attracted to the smell of blood. Trolls. One of the first creatures encountered in the series. They can be about 12 feet tall, weigh over 1 ton, and have immense strength. The characters encounter a troll set loose into Hogwarts their first year. The troll was set loose by Professor Quirrell in an attempt to create a distraction so that he could steal the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you're from. The creepiest part about the troll is the sound that it makes. Trolls aren't capable of intelligent language, so their cries are really just expressions of their hunger for human flesh. That's right. These things may not be the smartest, but they actually eat people. So you can only imagine how scary it is for a child as young as 11 years old to have to take one of these on alone. This incident also took place on Halloween, so also not knowing if this was some kind of cruel first-year prank or an actual attack is also bound to cause anxiety. One good thing to come out of it was that the scary incident may have been what brought Harry, Ron, and Hermione together as friends, but there would be many more, far scarier opponents in the future.
Not many first-year students could take on a fully grown mountain troll and live to tell the tale.
Cerberus. A Cerberus only ever appears during Harry's first year. The one encountered is a giant 3-headed dog with sharp teeth, very aggressive, and very territorial. The whole point of having this dog is to scare students away, and the dog was the guard of a door leading to the Philosopher's Stone. The only thing that's not scary about this creature is its name. Fluffy. There are 2 main factors that make Fluffy creepy. First is that the students are not told that he's there to guard a door, only that they are forbidden from entering the room. Fluffy falls asleep in the presence of music, so trying to sneak past him is extremely nerve-wracking because it's hard to say when he might wake up and attack.
Does it seem a bit quiet to you?
The harp. It stopped playing.
The Tale of the 3 Brothers. This book is a fairy tale that witches and wizards apparently tell to their young as a supposed backstory of the Deathly Hallows, the most powerful tools in the wizard world. Why any parent would tell this horrifying tale to their young children who can't even read yet is completely beyond me. But nonetheless, Ron claims that learning this tale from a very young age is commonplace. The story is about 3 brothers who cheat death. Yes, the Grim Reaper. And are each allowed 1 wish as a prize. The first gets the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in existence. The second gets a resurrection stone to bring someone back to life. And the third brother, the wisest of the 3, gets the Cloak of Invisibility to evade death in the future. But that's not the scary part. The first brother uses the Elder Wand to kill a wizard he didn't like, but because he boasted about the power of the wand, someone came and slit his throat in the night to steal it. The second brother is the most disturbing though. He uses the resurrection stone to bring back his dead girlfriend. She, not belonging to the world of the living, appears in a cold, sad state. which eventually drives the brother to kill himself. Think about the implications of this. Harry uses the Resurrection Stone to bring himself back after he allows Voldemort to kill him in the forest. That means it's possible that if the effects of taking someone back from death are true, then Harry will be miserable for his remaining days, possibly driving his wife and 3 kids mad with his condition. Now, that doesn't look to be the case based on his behavior in the epilogue, but it's entirely possible that this will kick in when his natural lifespan is up, and Ginny's final days with Harry will be filled with misery until Harry seeks his own tragic death. While we're on the topic of death, it seems that death is not always the end in the world of wizards. There are many ghosts present in the series. Most of them are completely friendly and not really creepy in the slightest. There are, however, a few exceptions. Okay, that one's not actually a ghost. That's a spell set by Mad-Eye Moody in order to scare off the Death Eaters from raiding the House of Black while the Order is away. But there are some creepy ghosts at Hogwarts, such as Helena Ravenclaw. In life, Helena was the daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, the founder of the Ravenclaw house. After running away from Hogwarts, Helena's mother became extremely ill and sent the Bloody Baron, who was in love with Helena, to retrieve her. Not wanting to go with the Baron, Helena refused, and in a rage, the Baron killed her, leaving her bitter and angry at everyone outside of her own house, earning her the nickname the Grey Lady. In fact, the rest of Hogwarts doesn't even believe that Helena's ghost can speak, because she's only ever been known to talk to Ravenclaws from time to time. Her quiet, shy, and serene nature makes it all the more terrifying when you try to confront her and witness one of her outbursts.
I know what he's done! I know who he is! He defiled it with dark magic!
The last ghost that I'm going to talk about is not creepy in a horror sense, but I do feel that she deserves a mention. Moaning Myrtle is the ghost of a student who haunts the second-floor girls' lavatory at Hogwarts. She was the lone student killed during the occurrences of the 1943 school year, in which the Chamber of Secrets was opened and the monster was set free by Tom Riddle. Myrtle isn't really a scary ghost per se, but she is creepy in her own way. Her reckless emotions are enough that nobody ever goes into the bathroom she inhabits, and she has a strange fascination with death for someone stuck in the mental state of a 14-year-old.
I was just sitting in the U-bend thinking about death.
Myrtle is more seen as creepy because she doesn't really know boundaries, and from what we can gather, she's kind of a weird kid even before death, and tends to make the students uncomfortable. But Moaning Myrtle is really just trivial compared to our next moment of horror.
Tonight, he who betrayed his friends whose heart rots with murder shall break free. Innocent blood shall be spilt, and servant and master shall be reunited once more.
Yep, and just another day in divinations class with Professor Trelawney. But the creepy thing here is not Professor Trelawney, but rather the array of visions that happen throughout Voldemort's rise to power. Most of them are visions that appear to Harry because of his connection with Lord Voldemort. Imagine how horrifying it must be to know that at any time you might be yanked out of the here and now and sucked into a nightmarish image of the world's most powerful dark force, who, by the way, wants to kill you. The visions get more and more creepy as Lord Voldemort starts to realize that he and Harry are connected and starts to show him things on purpose in order to get into his head. There's also a pretty scary scene at the end of Order of the Phoenix in which Voldemort takes over Harry's body entirely to deliver a message to Dumbledore.
You've lost, old man.
One of the things that makes this universe scary is the fact that powerful creatures can be found roaming freely with no real safe havens. The Muggles have no idea that dangerous magical creatures could be among them at any time. There are 2 examples of such creatures made most prominent in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the Animagus and the werewolves.
Werewolves?
Both are creatures with human forms and the ability to transform into beasts. The main difference, as taught by Professor Snape when he substitutes teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts, is that the Animagus have control over their transformations and have the ability to turn into a wider variety of animals. whereas werewolves will transform against their will and will always transform into a beast similar to a wolf. Both can be quite creepy in their own ways. Animagus have control over their actions, so clever planning can be used to trick an unsuspecting victim who thinks that they're just dealing with an animal. It should be mentioned that many Animagus are not evil, but it's also common for criminals to take advantage of this ability to escape the law. Werewolves can be scary for the opposite reason. Though they may be perfectly good people in their human forms, when the full moon hits, they lose control and attempt to bite or kill anyone they can get their paws on. Werewolves also have one of the scariest forms. While they do resemble regular wolves, their long, gangly limbs are a transformation from what we would normally expect, causing the werewolves to look like a terrifying cross between man and wolf. Combine that with their sharp, carnivorous teeth, empty, glowing eyes, and the fact that they appear at night, and you have some of the most dangerous creatures the world has to offer. We do have more creatures to discuss, but it's not just creepy monsters that Harry and his friends have to deal with. One of the first creepy places that Harry visits is Nocturne Alley. Harry accidentally travels there before his second year when he mispronounces Diagon Alley and is taken there instead. Like Diagon Alley, Nocturne Alley is a shopping center, but the shops are dedicated to the dark arts. As you can imagine, this draws in an interesting crowd of characters. Not the crowd that you want to fall in with before you start your second year of school.
Come with us. We'll help you find your way back.
But Nocturne Alley isn't just a mall for misfit wizards. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione return to Nocturne Alley before their 6th year, they eavesdrop on some kind of ritual going on at a store called Borgin & Burke's, which appears to be Draco Malfoy's initiation as a Death Eater. Borgin & Burke's is also the store where Tom Riddle got his first job after leaving Hogwarts. Other notable locations in Nocturne Alley include a shop that sells materials related to raising the dead, a shop that sells bones, and a shop that sells shrunken heads. The alley is creepy not only because of its morbid nature, but mostly because of the horrible people it can attract. The next item is actually a cursed object that Harry encounters almost immediately upon arriving at Nocturne Alley. I'm referring to the Hand of Glory, a severed human hand skeleton with the power to immobilize those who catch its gaze and unlock doors. This is because the hand is said to have belonged to an executed master criminal. It only makes a small cameo appearance in the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, but with that in mind, Harry is lucky to have ever escaped its grasp. The chilling thing about these objects are the rumors of how they are created, with many myths claiming that executed criminals' blood is used to animate the hand. Stick around, because after the break, I'll be discussing an even more shocking object that Harry encounters during his time at Hogwarts. In order to gain more information about Nicholas Flamel, the creator of the Philosopher's Stone, Harry sneaks into a restricted section in the library, where this happens. The impact of the jump scare is multiplied by the fact that Harry's sneaking around, and we're thinking more about not getting caught than something scaring us. The agonized face to go along with it in the film adaptation also adds to the effect. Later on, towards the end of the first year, Harry and the gang go to retrieve the stone, and after getting past the aforementioned Fluffy, find themselves in another trap. Devil's Snare. This is a plant with magical properties. It wraps around its victim, and the level of its constriction is determined by the panic level of the victim. If the victim relaxes, the snare will relax its grip. They thrive in dark, damp environments, making it the perfect trap for a dungeon. Devil's Snare preys on the fear of claustrophobia, with a critical twist. As fear intensifies, so does the threat, creating an endless cycle of increasing danger if one cannot compose themselves while caught in the snare. This is easier said than done, since those who suffer from the anxiety disorder of claustrophobia often have symptoms including panic attacks or fear of suffocation. Hogwarts is a 10th century Gothic-style castle, which in many cases can be creepy in its own right, but I'd like to explore some of the other creepy locations in the series. The Triwizard Maze. During Harry's 4th year at Hogwarts, an interscholastic competition known as the Triwizard Tournament is held, and the final task is to navigate the Triwizard Maze, an enormous hedge maze with 20-foot hedges. Prior to the contestants entering the maze, Dumbledore offers them a word of caution.
You see, people change in the maze. Oh, find the cup if you can, but be very wary. You could just lose yourselves along the way.
This fits in with the themes of maturation that arise after the Triwizard Tournament. The students are growing up into adults and changing to face the harsh realities of the real world. However, as in life, the contestants are not only finding themselves changing, for better or for worse, but the world around them is changing as well. The maze has the ability to reconfigure itself, and those who are not able to adapt are sucked into its grasp and defeated. In this way, the maze combines the fear of growing up, Jurassicophobia, with the fear of being lost to create a terrifying trial for young wizards. I think we've all been creeped out by the idea of someone living within our walls at one point or another. And if not, I'm sure everyone's gotten a chill from an abandoned location at some point. These are two reasons why I find the Chamber of Secrets to be the creepiest location in Hogwarts. The Chamber of Secrets is an ancient system of pipes under the school that housed the monster of Slytherin, which of course I'll touch back on and analyze later in this video. The chamber is so well hidden that even the teachers and staff cannot find it, and do not believe with full certainty that it exists. The chamber can be accessed by activating the correct sync tap while speaking the phrase "open up" in Parseltongue. After navigating a series of caves filled with skeletons and sewage pipes, they come across the door to the inner chamber. Another line of snake speak grants access to an enormous pathway lined with vicious-looking snakehead statues and a statue at the end of an old man's face, who I can only assume is Salazar Slytherin, the founder of the house and designer of the chamber. Salazar was prejudiced against mudbloods, or wizards with muggle parents, so knowing that the chamber was some kind of lair for those kind of people adds an additional factor of unsettling atmosphere. There are so many reasons that the Chamber of Secrets is scary. Primarily, snakes. If you find snakes creepy, this is not the place for you. Isolation is another reason. When Harry and Ron are down there, nobody knows that they're there. So unlike their previous adventures, no teacher would be able to bail them out. The third reason is anticipation. The horror of the contents of the chamber is built up over the course of their second year, with creepy messages being left and scary stories circulating. Finally, the true contents of the chamber are unknown. All Harry knows is that it's rumored and probably does contain a monster, so he's always on edge during his visit. If you think the Chamber of Secrets seems like an unsafe place for school children, you won't even want to begin to explore the Forbidden Forest. Also known as the Dark Forest, this dangerous, sprawling woodland could be the subject of its very own video, but in order to keep things brief, let's just touch on a few of the things that can be found here. Keep in mind, this is directly adjacent to the school. There's no fence, there's no spell keeping anything in or out. It's just considered off limits. The forest is home to Acromantulas, Thestrals, unicorns, centaurs, werewolves, hippogriffs, and, after the events of Year 1, Fluffy. But during the events of Year 1, Lord Voldemort. Did I mention that this is right next to the school? I would never be able to sleep at night knowing I was this close to such a dangerous location. But the Forbidden Forest isn't the only dangerous location that's right next to the school. Stay tuned to hear about the other one. The Great Lake is a relatively small freshwater lake that houses a couple of the creepiest creatures in Harry Potter lore. As if the close proximity to Hogwarts wasn't enough, it's also linked with the school's drain system. The lake contains a couple of species of creepy sea creatures. Merpeople. I know mermaids in horror are not often associated with each other, but these mermaids are not your typical hot girl attached to a fishtail. They're more like extremely scary fish with a somewhat humanoid form. Oh, and did I mention that they have sharp teeth and sharper pitchforks? And they sound like this?
Only one.
But the merpeople are really the least of Harry's concerns during his underwater trial in the Triwizard Tournament. At the bottom of the lake lies a great evil known as Grindelwald. If merpeople are half man, half fish, then Grindelwald are more like half demon, half octopus, and the result is terrifying. They're typically just under 5 feet tall, making an encounter with one pretty scary on its own, but these creatures dwell at the bottom of the lake and attack in swarms. They are described as sickly green creatures with horns, and yes, they are actually considered demons. They mostly survive on eating fish or algae, but they're known to eat humans from time to time. They supposedly have very strong fingers with which they strangle their prey. But perhaps even more haunting, the Grindelwald are depicted in folktales to grab little children standing near the edge of the lake and pull them down, to drown them before feasting on their insides. Horcruxes. Like the Dark Forest, the Horcruxes are a huge topic to cover. These objects are cursed with a spell that puts part of the caster inside the object so that he may not be killed unless the object is destroyed. Lord Voldemort has 7 of them, which is a lot considering this process can only be initiated by killing another wizard. The objects themselves are not what I consider creepy. Besides the snake, that one's a straight nope. But the essences of Voldemort that are released with the destruction of each one can be pretty off-putting. Perhaps the most creepy incidence of this, and one of the creepiest images in the series overall, is the second to last Horcrux, Harry Potter himself. Harry must allow Voldemort to kill him in order to kill the little bit of Voldemort that resides inside of him. Harry is taken to the afterlife, where we see this fragment of the Dark Lord that binds he and Harry together finally die off. Professor Snape. Well, okay, Professor Snape isn't actually that creepy in the end, but his mannerisms have been known to intimidate students, earning him a reputation.
Neville, what frightens you most of all?
Professor Snape.
Sorry?
Professor Snape.
Professor Snape.
As time goes on, however, this fear does become less laughable, due to the ever-decreasing faith the heroes have in Snape's loyalty to Dumbledore, the frightening power he displays, and his duty as a triple agent keeping tabs on the Death Eaters. Snape's harsh nature and particular disdain for Harry Potter may have stemmed from his past, being bullied by Harry's father, and his unrequited love for Harry's mother. Lily's death could help explain his dislike for light and hopeless demeanor.
Turn to page 394.
Did you know? The Mirror of Erised is named as such because Erised is the mirror image of the word desire. Dumbledore tells Harry that the happiest person would look into the mirror and see nothing but their own reflection. The mirror shows the deepest desire of whoever gazes into it. Harry spends many nights revisiting the mirror to see the image of himself with his parents. Although this sounds like a happy time of reflection, the mirror may actually be a great danger to its user.
This mirror gives us neither knowledge or truth. Men have wasted away in front of it, even gone mad.
To me, this is one of the creepiest objects in the wizarding world because of these implications. Monsters are scary, sure, but the Mirror of Erised reflects more of a psychological horror. The mirror presents the user's greatest desire, regardless of if the desire is an attainable goal or a fantasy. The euphoria produced by looking into the mirror is so strong that it starts to become addictive. It dangles an often unattainable goal before those who look into it, and cause them to lose track of what's real and what's fantasy. Once this happens, the person is as good as trapped in their own mind without the knowledge or desire to get out. Perhaps the scariest part, though, is that those with the greatest ambition are the most vulnerable to it. The next topic is something unlikely to ever appear to anyone in the mirror: Acromantula. These giant spiders grow to over 15 feet long, possess giant pincers, and contain extremely toxic venom. And like all too many of the species that I've discussed, love the taste of human flesh. As if that wasn't already enough, these creatures are intelligent, and we know at the very least that the colony leaders are capable of speech. Their ability to communicate, however, does not make them any less savage.
My sons and daughters do not harm Hagrid on my command. But I cannot deny them fresh meat when it wanders so willingly into our midst. Goodbye, friend of Hagrid.
Can we panic now?
Yes, that would be an appropriate time to panic. Even given their former leader's alliance with Hagrid, the Acromantula attempt to eat Hagrid right after Aragog's death. and still take the more powerful side of Voldemort during the final battle for Hogwarts. They don't even make an exception for their own kind. When one dies, the colony eats the corpse until nothing remains. I can appreciate resourcefulness, but the very idea of an Acromantula funeral sends shivers. I can only imagine how Ron Weasley feels about all of this. 1 year after his first encounter with the colony in the Dark Forest, his greatest fear is revealed during Professor Lupin's Defense Against the Dark Arts class. So the Acromantula encounter is sure to be one of the scariest moments for Ron, but make sure to keep watching because up next is a creature that even they are terrified of. Earlier on in this video, I mentioned that the Chamber of Secrets is home to the monster of Slytherin, which Harry assumed was Aragog. What he eventually found upon entering the chamber was that something even more nightmarish was within the walls of the castle all along. The monster is the Basilisk, a massive, 50-foot serpent monster with the power to kill anyone who makes direct eye contact with it or petrify those who make indirect eye contact. Its fangs are so venomous that they're one of the only known materials powerful enough to destroy a Horcrux. The Basilisk is intelligent, cunning, and like other serpents, has the ability to speak to those wizards who understand Parseltongue. Its voice makes your skin crawl. Salazar Slytherin, who left Hogwarts shortly after co-founding it due to a disagreement over the acceptance of mudbloods, created the chamber deep under the school just before departing. It was so well hidden that the teachers began to accept the idea that it was just a myth.
Well, naturally the school has been searched many times. No such chamber has been found.
When Tom Riddle discovered the chamber as a Hogwarts student, he was able to control the Basilisk because he was the last remaining heir of Slytherin. He turned it against the school, hurting many and killing one student, Myrtle Warren, who would later become known as Moaning Myrtle. Since it was Riddle who committed this crime, he was able to create his first Horcrux using his diary, which preserved his state at the time until the next time the chamber was opened, Harry Potter's second year, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione decide to investigate.
And it'll be dangerous. Very dangerous.
The Basilisk is one of the scariest monsters in the wizarding world, even without the influence of a Dark Lord controlling it. Snakes are already creepy creatures to begin with. Turning it into a giant 50-foot monster is no exception. Tom Riddle's diary takes control of Ginny Weasley to write the foreboding warning on the walls across Hogwarts and eventually take her prisoner to feed off of her life force. Feeding off of an 11-year-old's life force is always going to be creepy in my mind. When Harry and Ron get closer to rescuing her, they discover the giant molted snake skin. That's not a pleasant thought either. Harry manages to blind the beast, but that just makes it even more terrifying somehow, because it uses sound to continue to track Harry. But the scariest part, in my opinion, is when Hermione discovers the method by which the Basilisk gets around the school.
Pipes? It's using the plumbing.
What makes this so very unsettling is that this actually happens in real life. If you have plumbing in your home, you're at the risk of snakes using that to get into your house and attack you while you're using the bathroom. And this could happen at any time. When the snake has a deadly magical stare, that fear is doubled or tripled, which is why I believe that Harry's second year had to be one of the scariest throughout his time at Hogwarts. I've already made several references to Voldemort's followers, the Death Eaters, a group of pure-blood supremacists who have sworn their allegiance to the Dark Lord. Like the Basilisk, it is their similarities to the real-world prejudice groups that make them creepy, along with their familiarity with the dark arts. Despite everything that happens in the first 3 years of Harry's time at Hogwarts, things are relatively under control compared to the chaos that would later be set at the Quidditch World Cup in 1994, and everything that took place after. The dark pointed robes and torches send a clear message that this group is back, And the fact that an entire fan base of wizards are scared off or killed by the Death Eaters is a testament to how feared they actually are. In the Voldemort revival ritual, the Death Eaters take on a cult-like form and use dark magic of which Harry has never seen the likes. Like the many real-world groups that they're based on, they use fear as a tactic to claim and retain their power. One of the most frightening scenes in the entire series takes place during Year 5 at the Department of Mysteries. The Death Eaters use their attire, in addition to a voice modulation spell, to ramp up the fear of the unknown that exists within all of us.
Where's Sirius?
You know, you really should learn to tell the difference between dreams and reality.
Another fear tactic they use is the disruption of order. Order gives us comfort and security, so by creating chaos, the Death Eaters instill fear in massive amounts of people at one time. Here's one moment I found particularly disturbing, where the Death Eaters create chaos at Bill Weasley's wedding.
The ministry has fallen. The minister of magic is dead. They are coming. They are coming.
Of course, it would be impossible to open a discussion about the Death Eaters without also mentioning the Dark Lord himself, Lord Voldemort. Tom Riddle is a true psychopath even from an early age. Flashback scenes to his childhood reveal his cold, evil persona and his ruthless thirst for power. Like his forefather Salazar Slytherin before, he sets out to purge those who he does not consider purebloods. His lack of empathy is truly chilling, and his rise to power is so forceful that most wizards are too afraid to even mutter his true name. If not for his encounter with Lily Potter, it's possible he may have never been stopped. But this important night drastically weakened Voldemort, forcing him to take on a new persona, hiding in the shadows and committing vile acts to stay alive, like slurping the cursed blood of the unicorn just for pure life energy. The transformation and revival had adverse effects on Voldemort. With each atrocity he committed using the dark arts, he became more serpent-like, losing his hair, flattening his nose, transforming his voice, and making him somewhat of a human monster. With each passing year after his revival, he becomes more and more powerful, and more disturbing. It does seem like a lot of his power comes from fear though. His reputation becomes so great that many of his opponents have psychologically already lost. The Minister of Magic himself refuses to admit that Voldemort is back even when all the evidence is there, because he is in such great denial. One of the only factors that eventually lead to his defeat is the fact that Harry starts a movement to get Hogwarts students to call Voldemort by his real name. Without this tide being turned over the course of Harry's education, it's hard to imagine the Hogwarts students standing any chance during the final battle. Voldemort's greatest asset really is fear itself. However, there are 3 more creatures that I've determined to be even more terrifying than Lord Voldemort, so be sure to keep watching to find out what makes them so scary. Before getting to the final 3, let's go over a couple of honorable mentions. Tom Riddle's graveyard. Classic spooky graveyard, gotta love it. The animatronics in the Weasley twins' shop. Absolutely nightmare fuel. Getting possessed by a cursed necklace. And also this one painting in The Prisoner of Azkaban, and then just the fact that Luna Lovegood keeps raw meat in her purse? Okay, final 3. The creepiest things I've found in the Harry Potter franchise. Boggarts. This shape-shifting species takes the form of its opponent's greatest fear. That means Boggarts can take the shape of everything I just mentioned so far in this video, and everything I will mention. In this regard, they're even scarier than Lord Voldemort, because if someone has something that they fear more than the Dark Lord, Boggarts can take that shape as well. There's really no need to analyze this one. Whatever your fear is, they will find it, and they will become it. I also find it kind of eerie that nobody has actually seen the true form of a Boggart, because once you've seen one, its shape has already been shifted. Even a Boggart looking in a mirror would technically, theoretically, become its own worst fear. I suppose someone could plant a camera, but as far as I know, nobody has, and I can only imagine that the default form is extremely disturbing. There are only a couple of reasons why Boggarts aren't the number one scariest thing. First, you can outnumber them. Assuming that your partner doesn't have the same fear that you have, only one would be affected. Second, the size of the Boggart is limited to the size of the room that they're in. And third, assuming that you know that you're up against the Boggart and not the real thing, you can use a ridiculous charm to vastly weaken it.
Ridiculous!
We've already talked about dark wizards like the Death Eaters and Lord Voldemort. And there's only one type of wizard that's more horrifying than a dark wizard. A dark wizard that has risen from the dead. Dark wizards have a spell used to reanimate the corpses of the dead. You may recall that there was a shop dedicated to necromancy in Nocturne Alley. However, the appearances of the Inferi are much more alarming than what comes to mind when I think of a zombie. Many of them are in a deep state of decay, revealing bone structures but also containing old traces of skin, hair, and flesh. To explain why we find these and similar morbid creatures scary, I'll refer to something known as the uncanny valley theory, an idea that the human brain is trained to recognize and process other human faces, but when there are alterations, we find them disturbing because we know that it's wrong. The cloudy white eyes also suggest that the corpse is not cognizant. Remember when trolls were the scariest thing that Harry had to worry about? Oh, what can change in a short 6 years. I was also going to include Harry's encounter the year after with Bathilda Bagshot at Godric's Hollow, but upon further investigation, that doesn't count because the corpse wasn't animated using a spell, but it's the same idea. At this point, you probably already know the scariest creature in all of the wizarding world. Let's give this some context. When Harry encounters the Boggart in Professor Lupin's Defense Against the Dark Arts class, his biggest fear isn't Voldemort, the man who killed his parents and who he's been hearing about for the better part of the last 3 years now. No, Harry's biggest fear is a Dementor, a creature he only once encountered very recently and briefly on the train, but had such a terrifying experience with, it surpassed even his battle with the Voldemort-controlled Professor Quirrell and his life-threatening experiences with the Basilisk or Acromantula. Unlike every other student in the class, Harry is not even given the opportunity to face his fear before Professor Lupin steps in to save him. The Dementors are floating, black-cloaked, wraith-like creatures. Their almost featureless faces are not often seen and contain only a large hole with which they suck the soul out of their victim, an experience said to be worse than death. The Dementors are first dispatched from their post guarding Azkaban in order to find and capture the escapee, Sirius Black. They surround Hogwarts during Harry, Ron, and Hermione's 3rd year. Harry first encounters one on the train where, for some unknown reason, it attempts to suck out his soul. Upon arriving at Hogwarts, Professor Dumbledore offers this warning.
A word of caution. Dementors are vicious creatures. They will not distinguish between the one they hunt and the one who gets in their way. Therefore, I must warn each and every one of you to give them no reason to harm you.
But the Dementor appearances become more frequent throughout the school year. Their very presence causes the plant life around them to immediately shrivel and die. They exude a radius of cold lifelessness, enough to freeze nearby water as they pass by. A Quidditch match nearly ends in disaster when Harry is once again targeted by several Dementors while chasing the snitch up in the clouds during a storm. There's only one known spell that can repel them, and it's very difficult to pull off, but Harry is able to perform a Patronus charm to ward off a spiraling swarm of them and save Sirius at the end of the year. Harry claims that the Dementors force you to relive your worst nightmares, in his case, the final cries of his parents being murdered by Voldemort. Up to that point, Harry already considers the Dementors to be the scariest encounter of his life, and that's while they're technically still on his side while trying to find Sirius Black. But things get even scarier for Harry when he's ambushed by 2 Dementors in the Muggle world before his 5th year, a place where he's supposed to be relatively safe from magical beings. Not long after, the allegiance of the Dementors was thrown even more into question after a mass breakout from Azkaban. It would not be long before Harry's worst enemy joined Voldemort and the Death Eaters in the battle. I think another reason the Dementors are as unsettling as they are, besides having the most sinister appearance of any other species, is the fact that they serve as guards. Everyone has broken the rules at some point as a kid and been punished for it. So everyone can relate to this fear of getting caught by these dark authority figures, even if they know that they haven't done anything wrong. When the Punisher is a 10-foot Reaper-like creature who sucks the light and happiness out of the air, senses your fear, and feasts on your soul, well, there isn't anything that could conceivably be worse than that. It's scary to think that many believe that the Dementors are too severe of a punishment for the prisoners in Azkaban, some of the worst criminals in the world. If they can't handle the torture of a Dementor, it's hard to believe that anyone could. One of the most chilling aspects is that once a Dementor has sucked out your soul, you may go on living as an empty shell, never experiencing happiness again. Dementors are Rowling's manifestation of a deep, unrecoverable depression. Unlike Voldemort, they will never go away. Thank you for sticking to the end of this video. Let me know in the comments if there are any creepy things in the Wizarding World that I failed to mention, and be sure to give me your ideas on what non-horror franchise I could cover in the next episode of Creepy Things. My name is CZ, and if you love horror, you're in the right place. On this channel, I do videos on a variety of horror topics like things you missed in horror movies, and al dente creepypasta, where I write and narrate my own horror stories. Dumbledore would like to remind you to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming we both survive.